Hello students, this is our second meeting as I have met you before on the first video about the course syllabus. On this video, I will present a brief explanation what is Introduction to Law course. As we all raise through storytelling, this presentation will start to recall your experience and guide you to understand about the course. First, have you experienced this? Being stopped by the police for traffic law enforcement? When was it? What did you do? Have you ever experienced this? E-commerce is getting more popular nowadays, especially after travel restrictions due to the pandemic. Have you ever been fooled by false advertisement? The picture of the product is so much different in reality. What did you do then? Furthermore, do you aware that the lawmaking process in our country has gotten more attention from the public? That the COVID-19 pandemic has also affected the world's political arena, from hoaxes to scientific debates over cure and vaccine? How do you see we have been experiencing infodemic, flooding of information? 1 million question then, do we as legal scholars study those events? If so, how do we study them? Yes, this course will guide you to master the basic knowledge to look through those events using legal scholars classes. Introduction to Law course is an encyclopedia. Introduction to Law is different from Introduction to Indonesian Law course. Introduction to Law focuses to study of legal science or jurisprudence. It is an abstract discourse without limitation of jurisdiction and time. It gives you the basic overview of the main foundation of law, important teaching in legal science, and also this course is valued as a basis for further study. Many of you who taking this class are a new student of Faculty of Law UGM. You also taking Introduction to Indonesian Law at the same time. So I got to remind you that our course Introduction to Law is different from Introduction to Indonesian Law course because this course focuses to study legal science and the law itself in abstract discourse, again without limitation of jurisdiction and time. Meanwhile, Introduction to Indonesian Law course focus to give you the basic understanding of law in Indonesia jurisdiction. I'm going to use legal science or jurisprudence interchangeably. I will refer us as legal scholars or jurists, people who study law. Now, let's move on to understand about the legal science itself, as you now already understand what is Introduction to Law course. In this section, we're going to discuss these following topics: limitation and the scope of legal science approach method, and the importance of legal science. Okay, so bear in mind, law can be acknowledged as science, as we are now discussing about it, and further we're going to discuss law as norm, and also law as reality. As I mentioned, I'm going to refer legal science interchangeably with jurisprudence, but it is different with jurisprudence in Indonesian context. Right, so now what is the limitation and the scopes of legal science? What we are studying here is the principles, the basic values, the definition. Not only the definition of law itself, but also subjects of law, objects of law, any conducts of law. It does matter when we talk about law as guidance for human being to interact to each other. We're going to discuss about natures of law, whether it's an obligation or it's just an option, for example. And we're going to discuss the function of law, whether it's to serve order, whether it to gives rights and obligation or so. We're going to discuss about juries, about objectives, and also what are the sources of law. When people ask, oh, there is this traffic incident, the question is, what is the sources of law? How can we check violation of certain law occur in the accidents? We're also going to study the reason why law exists, what is law, and what is the purpose of law. Is it serving only for justice, for instance, or it opens the possibility for utility or other types of basic principles, and how law can be observed? Those are the basic questions. Meanwhile, when we also discussing about legal science, studying it, we also gonna learn to answer philosophical questions such as what is the nature and origins of law? What is the relation between law and power? What is relation between law and justice? And bear in mind that legal science is independent science, meaning it is not science that is limited under certain jurisdiction at a certain time. Now, how do we study legal science? There is some kind of approach when it comes to studying law or under legal science, because law typically is an abstract norm or as a reality. It is an independent science, that is correct, but we can borrow other social science approaches in order to study such norms, such reality. We can use normative analytical method, sociological method, historical method. Because law evolves with the society, it is important to study what happened in the past and to think about the future in studying law. And there is this systematic approach method, not only to see one single regulation, but to look at a big pictures of legal science. And there is also what we call as comparative method, as we want to get more understandings of legal system in the world and also solve problem in certain jurisdiction. It is important to compare and then to see some kind of best practice from other countries. Although we using other social science approach, but we still a jurist or a legal scholars because we focus that our object of study is social dynamic, but we believe in what we call as law as norms and also as a reality as well. So that is so important to keep that on in your mind. While theoretically speaking, the objects of legal science according to scholars pattern is the social science and philosophy, also into past history, seeks to create a balance between various conflicting legal systems. As I mentioned, it is important also to understand history because law evolves with society. Important studying legal science because we want to answer questions that been asked constantly, such as what is justice, what is utility. Although the phenomena are different, but we keep on asking those same questions. That is why we need to learn legal science. Legal science is dynamic because the target of investigation are abundant and the phenomena in societies are the object of it. So it's going to be very dynamic when you learn legal science. Here to give you example social dynamic and society as the object of law itself or legal science. For instance, nowadays people have been discussing that marijuana should be legal because it can be used for medicines. And there is also the rise of countries legalize same-sex marriage. And when it comes to e-commerce, there's so many development that need to be regulated by law, and legal science try to study to overcome it. And next, there is also this phenomenon of the pandemic, whereas there is a need not only to study about the vaccine but also the legality, for instance, about the vaccine, where the country can monitor their citizen through electronic devices, whether it's violating human rights privacy or not. Those are social dynamic that been questioned when it comes to studying legal science. Summary. Introduction to law is different with Introduction to Indonesian law. Introduction to law focuses on explaining the basic principles of law and the basic skill and knowledge that should be mastered by a new law school students. It is not limited to certain jurisdiction or certain time of law. When we discuss law as science or legal science is independent science, but it is also part of the social science itself, so it can borrow other social science approach in studying social phenomenon. That is all for this video.